So the first thing I want to do is, if when I'm looking at a photo, is try to pick the simplest shapes. And in this case, I'm going to start with a rectangle, kind of tilted a little bit, tilted to the side. Not a rectangle. We're going to make it a square. Our little raccoon's head's going to be tilted to the side a little bit. And just to have center, so we always have a good reference point, I'm going to draw a line straight through the center like that. And then we're going to draw, that's going to be the tip of his nose. Remember, these are just going to be the simplest, easiest shapes for now. And then the ears, it's actually going to come inside of the rectangle, about like that. We'll curve them a little bit. We don't want them perfect little triangles. Those look like they're a little bit small, I think. So I'm going to erase that. Make it a little bit bigger. Let's see. About like that. And then trying to keep it somewhat symmetrical. Trying to make this the same angle. We'll draw it kind of cutting off that edge. That's just for a visual, kind of a little reference point to draw his other ear. And then we're going to try to split this right through the center. And then that's kind of right where our eyeballs are going to be. Actually, those are a little too close together. Scoot them over just a little bit. Okay. Now from there, we're going to grab this little, that's kind of the tip of the nose. Let's make this little dome shape over the top like that. And we could draw, we'll draw his nose. Now from here, we're going to start, we're going to curve up around the eye like this on both sides. That's going to be the start to his little dark patches. I'll bring it over like this too. I know it looks really simple for now, but we'll add all of those details once we get everything mapped out. Now from right here at the tip of the nose, we're going to draw a line going down. If you follow this line all the way through, it would kind of go at an angle up to the tip of the ear over here. This is how you see, or how artists, when they're freehanding stuff, a portrait or something that needs to be very accurate, this is how they do it. They get these kind of they get these lines or these reference points and follow them up to these different points. So I know that this little angle I want is going to point up to the top of the ear here. At least on my little raccoon. And then this line here is roughly the same distance from here to here. You could do that with just you grab a ruler if you wanted, or you could grab it, kind of measure it like this. So I know I got a little bit of ways to go down here. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. And then this is going to be right up here. I'll make this big curved line. And his elbow. Down to his forearm. Very simple. somewhat simple shape into his little feet. We're not going to draw the details on his feet yet. Let's do like that. From over here. We'll draw that other leg with a little skinny ankle, little chicken leg. And a foot here. Very simple foot shape. Now this kind of makes this little V shape here. This is going to be kind of where that hind leg starts and the belly starts. We'll make it, it's going to be kind of thick, like it's going to be pretty thick over here. And then it's going to curve and wrap around. And then let's go back up to this side. This is kind of the back and the booty. Kind of curves up like that. I think this is a little bit too skinny, or too skinny, too short. So I'm gonna a little bit back, just a little bit, to make his body a little bit longer. And they almost stand, I don't know if how often you've seen raccoons, but they almost stand like a scared cat with their hair sticking straight up. And a lot of their poses. We've got raccoons, I don't see them a lot, but they are out here. There's his little foot. Now we're going to draw the back foot just off in the distance. Kind of like he's wearing little skinny jeans here. And then over there like that. And actually, yeah, that's fine. We'll do it like that. And then, of course, you're going to want to draw the tail. So we've got the basic shape. And this is what I would recommend to start with whenever you're doing drawings, to try to use all of these different, like I was talking about, this line here up to this this ear, and putting these guidelines in to map out your drawing. So then when it's time to actually start adding all of the details in the hair, everything's in the right place. Let's fix this head a little bit. We're going to bring this cheek out a little bit like that. We'll do the same thing over here. We're going to kind of round off the bottom there. Something like that. And then this will be the darker little patch. So now what I would recommend, we've got everything mapped out, everything's kind of where it should be. We'll start putting more details into the feet and the fur and everything, but using the side of your HB pencil, let's just shade all of it in. There's going to be white spots and highlights and dark areas, but we're going to do this to get our kind of our midtones down on our paper. And if you've been with me a while, you know I always say you need your midtones down. That way when you go and erase something that's a highlight, you can actually see it, because you need your midtones to contrast against that white area. So we'll use our midtones. We're just going to shade over the entire thing. Kind of like, I don't know, I'd guess a 50% gray or black. But and if you use the side of your pencil like we're doing here, you can see like this, you're going to have your hard lines. But if you do on the side of your pencil, it's going to be much softer. And also a little tip, while I'm doing this, I'm rotating my hand just a little bit, or rotating the pencil. And what that's doing is sharpening my pencil as I draw or as I sketch. So I'm kind of flattening that side of the graphite. Now I could rotate my pencil a little bit. Keep working at it, and that's going to that's just going to keep your pencil sharp, so you don't have to use an eraser, or you don't have to use a pencil sharpener every 30 seconds or so. Just a little trick. And it's something I do a lot of times without really noticing. You can see it's really kind of drawing up the side of the black of or up the wood part of the pencil bit. So this is what I call, we're just blocking in the basic shape, and we'll start layering in all of those details. Right now we're kind of just creating the silhouette of them. The only problem with this is sometimes you end up going a little bit too dark and you miss your guideline. So you might need to touch them up a little bit just so you don't miss them. But this should be a really quick process, and when I get done here, really quick process if you're not talking too much. When you get done here, you can use a blending stump like we talked about earlier, a tissue, your finger, a Q-tip, anything you've got, just to smooth out the graphite on your paper so it is so it's a little smoother, not so grainy looking, and it'll look a little bit more finished. I'm going to leave this area white. Just so I don't have to erase it. I know that's going to be pretty light spot on our raccoon. And then we could shade all of this in. But we really do need a darker pencil for those really dark areas. But we've got the basics laid out on our little raccoon. I don't know if you can see. Right here on the nose. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to draw just a curved line like that on both sides. And we'll kind of shade it in for the nostrils. And then this little spot on the top is going to be a highlight, and we could shade in the rest a little bit darker. We can make that a little bit smaller. That's just a little strip. I'm going to switch to an 8B pencil, my really dark pencil. I'm going to make sure I have a really nice sharp point on it. So we're going to darken in those eyes really dark. Or color them in really dark. Start hitting some of those really dark shadows. So we're just going to circle, or start with our circle. You can already see how much of a difference that this pencil makes compared to the other one. I'm going to draw a little circle right there. That's going to be the little reflection. And we'll just draw the rest really dark, like that. And then now I'm going to draw another circle around it, as close as I can. Like that. As close as I can to that original circle. You can see it starting to come together and look kind of cool. Now from there is the pattern on our raccoon's head. So I'm going to go up a little bit like that. Every raccoon's a little bit different with their fur, and these markings on their face. But I'm going to start there. I'll start coloring that in, or shading that in. Now, I always talk about, and I have my my wildlife course coming up, and in my course, I'm always talking about when you're drawing fur or hair, you want to use small little strokes like this, the length of the hair. And when you're doing it, you want to draw these little short strokes, the direction that the hair is growing or laying down. So even if you can't see it much, you can tell that I'm doing these small little short strokes in this direction because that's the way the hair's combed or brushed or just laying around. And these tiny little, even if you can barely see it, like over here, these tiny little strokes and subtle little things that you do will make a difference in your drawing in the long run. Even if you could barely see it, it'll make a difference. Now I'm going to go over to this eye. I'm going to copy this little point that he had right here. Come around that way. Alright, so I'm going to start these little directions, especially right off that little circle. Remember, small little short strokes. If our raccoon had really long hair, you would do longer strokes like this. But we want to keep them real short. And it kind of blends off into where it gets a little bit lighter over here. Now we're going to use that same pencil, and maybe we're going to darken the top of his head. And a lot of times on the body, like over here, I'm going to use these little scribble lines like this in the ears. You don't want these smooth lines because it's going to look like skin. So you want these kind of little squiggle lines to make it look like hair or his fur. And then up here, we're going to start really dark. And we're going to blend that down his head a little bit. We're going to blend that down his head a little bit to those little patterns on his head. As far as the light source goes, we're going to say it's an overcast day, so there's not going to be a very hard, bright light, but it's going to be on the top. So we'll say right around, if you can see, maybe in that direction. This might be a masterpiece. I might be able to sell this on eBay, so I got to make sure I erase that. Okay, so now down the tip of the nose. We're going to start kind of like a soft gray, not too dark. And start bringing it up towards the forehead. See how it kind of comes in the middle here too. And then this line basically is going to go all the way to that top part of the head. And then we can start blending this a little bit lighter and lighter as it comes down. And then it's going to have this dark little patch that goes in front of the ear. And now we're going to go, let's see, we could add some more kind of, let's do this. I don't know if you guys have one of these, but I'm going to use this just to blend this a little bit. And smooth it out a little bit. You could use a tissue if you've got one, or a Q-tip. I'm sure you've got something. You could roll your paper up like this. This is a horrible example, but you can kind of roll it up and do the same thing that this is doing. or use your finger. If you use your finger, just make sure that you're not smudging that across your paper over here somewhere. Now with that same 8B pencil, I'm just going to start adding these tiny little lines like this to create the texture of hair and the feel of hair, the impression of hair and fur. And right here, just above the top of that really dark patch, it's going to be lighter. We're going to have we'll go and erase some highlights there. Try to use these little short strokes like this to make it look like fur. Mine looks very angry. Some raccoons are mean. Now if you've got one, I'm going to use this little mono zero eraser. I'm just going to erase some highlights right here. Right on the top. Maybe right here on the nose too, so to make that stand out a little bit. There we go. And then now we could go into the ear here. Just add a little bit of shading and some fur. I'm going to make it heavier in the center to kind of give it that shape or that form. And over here, do the same thing. I'm going to erase a little bit here too, on the edge of his head. And then right here, against that, we're going to add some contrast. We're going to make it darker. And I always, when I'm drawing fur, I always use little lines instead of just trying to maybe do like circles like that, unless it's you just have to pay attention to the kind of texture that you're trying to create. So if it's short hair like this, I use short little lines like this. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker right here on the bottom, and a little shadow underneath. Not a shadow, but just darker underneath, where the head kind of has a shadow that's casting down here. And they almost have, if you look at a porcupine, they have dark roots and light tips. Or maybe think of a Backstreet Boy from back in the day. dark roots and dark tips, or light tips. That's kind of what our little raccoon looks like. So we're going to try to keep that in mind when we're drawing the fur. But now I'm going to go and start refining the shape a little bit more. And remember, when we do these little, when we're adding the, or when we're drawing the edges, you don't want a long kind of smooth line. You want it to kind of these short broken lines, so it'll look like fur, not skin. So I'm just going to add these little short lines all over. And then once we have the basic texture down, we could go and darken whatever areas we need to make it look darker, or to make it give it the shadows. So I'm going to continue down right around here is where down here it starts to get a little bit lighter on his fur. And when I do fur, you notice I'm going really quick, kind of like these, almost like these curved little W shapes. And I just go back and forth really quick, or whipping. That's what I call it. I kind of whip the fur in. And that creates quick little texture, quick little fur texture. Now our little raccoon is you know, he's kind of off at a distance, and you're not going to have a ton of detail in the fur because it's too far away. But if you were going to draw like a portrait of a raccoon, something up close, you would see all of these. You would kind of draw the hair a little bit differently, where it's bunched into these kind of clumps of hair. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter here. And right here in this V, I'm going to draw it darker. That's his belly, but the way the light's hitting it, it's going to be darker there. This is a little shadow behind his elbow. If you can't see his elbow, maybe you could add some little highlights with your eraser right along the edge like this. And then you could add some more contrasting shadow there to make it stand out a little bit. All right, now we're going to move a little bit quickly. I'm going to do these little scribble lines like this, or M shapes or W's, or these little whip technique to get the texture of the hair. This is again with our 8B pencil. This is a really dark, really soft pencil. And even if it gets kind of too scribbly, you can grab your blending stump and blend it together. And you'll still see the texture under there, just won't be so dramatic. I'm going to go pretty quick now and just punch in all of the basic texture of the hair. And notice when I'm doing this, I'm copying the direction the hair is growing on the body. When you do this, it's kind of almost like a contour line. If you don't know what a contour line is, check out my drawing fundamentals course. We go over kind of the basics and all these different rules, but it helps create the contour or the shape or the form of the body. So like this is a contour line. Just by adding those little lines, it makes the back tail look curved or round and gives it the form. And then of course we'll draw this back part of his little booty, or hers. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl raccoon. We're going to make that a little bit darker. And then lighter and lighter as it comes over here. Like these little scribble lines. I always tell people when you're drawing this stuff, a lot of people give up because it takes a while. Drawing is not something, or drawing something realistic takes time. And a lot of people give up. So if you don't have the patience to draw something, to draw all of this fur, what I would recommend is draw it smaller, so you don't lose your patience and quit. Or do just a smaller section of them. Maybe do just the head, and then build up your endurance. But a lot of people give up before it's finished. And there's always a beginning stage and the kind of ugly stage to your drawing, but it's going to look funny until it's finished. And then under here, this back leg, I just draw really dark because it's back on the other side of the body and kind of in the shadows. So we'll just draw it really dark and kind of just a silhouette of it. Now here's the fun part. Make sure you have a sharp pencil. Now we could add those little stripes in our raccoon. So this is with that same pencil, the 8B pencil. Like these M shapes or W shapes. Just kind of whip it back and forth on your paper. And do a little bit here too, even though that's a light area. I still want to have a little bit of texture there. Do some more in here. And one more here. And then the tip is going to be really dark. So I know it looks really sketchy right now, but if you grab your blending stump, this is kind of the layering process that I always talk about. Blend it together. I know we're just like, oh no, we just covered all of that area. But this is the process, so at least this is how I do it. Smooth it out so it doesn't look so grainy, and that's going to make it still going to leave the texture down there. It's still going to look like fur. We're going to push the pencil in with this this blending stump. We're pushing it in to the tooth of the paper, into the grain or the tooth of the paper. And then do it over here too. And then you kind of play this game, this back and forth game of layering all of these details in. So now I grab an eraser. This is my little fine tip eraser, my mono eraser. And start erasing some of those highlights back in. Or you could be really careful and just don't color over it in the first place, but I like to go back and forth like this. And you can highlight some of the top of the ears, different spots of our little raccoon, and the patterns in their fur. Now the feet over here, that's a whole nother story. These little feet almost look like hands, but what we're gonna do, we're gonna keep it kind of simple. We'll shade that in a little bit. They're gonna be darker on the bottom, almost like they're wearing socks, little ankle socks. And then you can erase them. If you had a really fine tip eraser like I do, you could erase some of those little claws on them. And then go back with your really dark pencil, your 8B, and add the toes. Do some more over here. I think I missed a little spot. Let's add a little toe right there. We'll just put these little curved lines over it like that. They'll almost look like almost draw the claws for you, or the claws. What do you call them? Paws. Oops. But I think that's the basics. So I think the hard part, not the hard part, but The most important part when you get started, start with those simple shapes to create the basic shape of our raccoon, or whatever your subject is. And then figure out what kind of texture it's going to have. Is it smooth? Is it soft? Is it fluffy? Is it hard? Is it metal? Is it plastic? You know, what kind of texture does it have? And then get your midtones down. Start adding all your basic simple shading, and just start layering. You're going back and forth like an argument, and start layering out your highlights and your dark shadows. You put some little highlights like that, and kind of put it all together. It takes time, but it'll all come together. And trust yourself and trust the process. That's what I always say. You got to trust the process. There's going to be an ugly stage, but eventually, you know, the more you work at it, it'll start to come together. Can we imply for fill just some areas? Yeah, you don't need to draw, depending on how far or how close up your drawing is. You definitely imply for. You're not going to have time to draw all of these tiny little lines. You would definitely imply that, or do your impression of it. Kind of like these little squiggle lines. I'm just scribbling here, and it creates the. We're implying or doing our impression of fur. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully that makes sense, and you've created a cool looking raccoon that looks maybe better than mine.